We can start for you. Happy to help. How are you? Oh, how unusual for me. How are you?
Arda's putting us live streaming on Facebook.
Cool.
We're very sophisticated.
You've come a long way.
Just gonna check that that's working.
Oh, this Judy?
We have a lot of Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think we're good. I'm just making sure on this end that it's working for, not just on this end.
Hi, everybody. Thank you and welcome to our May Community Exchange. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Sandra Montiel. I'm the Program and Outreach Manager for Burbank Arts for All Foundation, and we are very excited to welcome you to this conversation this morning. Today, we're going to be talking about Burbank Unified's budget crisis and what steps we can take and come together as a community to do to support our district during this time of need. We'll discuss from the state level down to the local level and give you positive, actionable steps that you can take away with you to do today to support BUSD. We're excited to welcome a variety of speakers with us today, as well as a variety of amazing people in the room this morning. Today we have Arda from Senator Portantino's office. I know I just saw it. We have Sarojini and Maria from Assemblymember Friedman's office. We have Shar Tabit from the BUSD Board of Education. Sharon Springer from the Burbank City Council. Then we also have Superintendent Matt Hill, Assistant Superintendent Sharon Caseo, BUSD's amazing Arts Education Department, Peggy Flynn and Daniel Swartz, as well as Tom Flavin, the CEO of the Burbank Chamber of Commerce. So I'm not going to take up too much of your time. We're going to get started. I'd like to welcome Arda up here to share some updates from the state level.
Good morning, everyone. I'm so happy to be amongst you all today. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to provide a legislative update on behalf of Senator Portantino. As someone who loves the arts, I truly enjoy coming to all of Arts for All's events and representing the senator. Senator Portantino really appreciates the passion behind Burbank Arts for All and the parents here today for your tremendous support of our schools, our students, and the importance of arts education. He is a proud annual member of Burbank Arts for All and has personally enjoyed attending and supporting many of Arts for All's events and school productions, including Burroughs on Broadway and the Pops concert. Arts education is particularly important to Senator Portantino. He is a former filmmaker. His wife, Ellen, works at Warner Brothers, and his oldest daughter, Sophia, is a visual effects coordinator on her second Warner Brothers feature. Our district office is also adorned with many prized artwork from the Secret Art Show, one a creation of Earl Brown, and an event that Senator Portantino found particularly educational and important was held at the Colony Theater with computer code writers and game designers a couple of years ago. Recently, he also enjoyed taking his daughter to the production of West Side Story at Burroughs. As a parent whose children have attended public schools, he is a strong and consistent advocate for public education. Since his assembly days, his top priority has been and continues to be public education, something he reiterated when he welcomed PTA members, PTA presidents from his district in his capital office, and the local teachers in our district in our Glendale office. For him, public education is a fundamental responsibility. Last month, he was happy to join BUSD in kicking off their budget awareness campaign and speak on the importance of arts education at Arts Advocacy Day in the Capitol. He has also strongly supported BUSD bond initiatives and parcel tax efforts. In 2017-2018, the California Arts Council awarded 113 grants totaling $1,492,858 for arts education projects across the state. On the budget front, last year's state budget included a $3.6 billion increase in LCFF. This increase was the planned full funding of LCFF and an additional $673 million increase to the funding base. The budget also included a $44 million federal funds block grant funding for visual and performing arts and mental and physical health services for schools. While this isn't enough, it is a step in the right direction. Governor Newsom's initial budget proposal from January included Proposition 98 funding of $71.2 billion for K-12. Once the budget proposal was released, both houses began the review process of the proposal, and the timeline of this is in the handouts that I have provided. So please feel free to take one, has all the information about the budget timeline. In line with Governor's proposed budget, each member will work towards supporting it with their own bills. Senator Portantino has introduced 20 bills this year aimed at supporting our public education, students, foster youth, public safety, housing, and small businesses. SB 217, the Special Education Early Intervention Grant Program bill, would require the superintendent to allocate to school districts $4,000 per child within the school district of residence who is 3 or 4 years of age, is an individual with exceptional needs, and is receiving a majority of state education and related services in the regular education program. This bill would also expand eligibility for transitional kindergarten to include children with exceptional needs turning 5 years old at any time during the school year. SB 729 would increase the LCFF base grant for the 2019-2020 fiscal year by a 5.16 cost of living adjustment. This would translate to approximately $2 million for Burbank. The increased base level would become a permanent part of the funding formula moving forward, and it would be a $1 billion increase to the LCFF base statewide. Both bills are moving through the legislative process, and we ask that you support our efforts by advocating for them at the local level. Senator Portantino is also supporting efforts to equalize special education funding, which is also a priority for the BUSD, and he is a proud co-author of SCA 5, which would lower the threshold to pass parcel taxes to 55%. If passed, this would help districts like BUSD. If passed, this would help districts like BUSD when trying to increase local funding for education. Recently, our office wrote to the Motion Picture Association and its member studios to urge them to use film and TV tax credit dollars to help fund CTE internship programs in our schools, and a copy of this letter was sent to the district. In addition, the senator has authored legislation to help students transfer from California community colleges with associate degrees for transfer, and an effort to help colleges house homeless college students. He is also helping lead a national effort to move the school start time later in the day, which research shows improves academic performance and has a positive effect on suicide reduction and other mental health concerns for our teens. I have brought with me a book that has all the research for the school start time bill in case anyone is interested in taking a look. I have a few copies. I'm sorry I couldn't bring too many, but feel free to grab one and take one to look over. Tomorrow, the governor will release his May revision of the budget, and the state legislature, after evaluating the updates, will have until June 15th to pass the final budget, and that should come out in the morning sometime. Senator Portantino is committed to continuing the collaborative process to ensure our students at all our public school segments have access to high quality and affordable public education. If you have any questions or concerns, please don't hesitate to contact our office. Thank you.
much, Arda. All right, if we can bring up Sarojini and Maria from Assemblymember Friedman's office to share some updates.
Good morning. I'm Sarojini Lall, and I'm District Director for Assemblymember Friedman. And I just want to briefly introduce Maria Azilazian, who's the field representative who represents Burbank in our office. So Maria, if you want to have a seat, and I'll give some comments on behalf of the Assemblymember. First of all, I want to thank Burbank Arts for All for putting together this forum. This is a very important conversation that the community is having. I know the Assemblymember wishes she could be here in person to meet with all of you. But I think it's clear that with the expertise and the passion and commitment of all of the people present in this room right now, we're going to get this done. So with that said, it's really clear living in Burbank, everyone understands that the arts are not a luxury. They're not an after the fact. They're not something that's expendable. They are central to the economy and the civic life of this city. There really isn't anything I can think of that would be more central than the arts. It is what is fueling the incredible economy of Burbank. So with that, we need to be investing in our students so that they can partake in that economy as they move forward out of school into college and into the workforce. That's something that everybody here takes as a given, but it's worth saying and reinforcing that. As Arda outlined earlier, the governor's budget did include $80.7 million for Proposition 98 funding for K through 12 schools and community colleges. So I'm just going to run through a couple of the highlights of the governor's budget just to reiterate where we are with that proposal. $2 billion of augmentation to the local control funding formula. There was $576 million proposed for special education. There was a one-time $3 billion non-Proposition 98 general fund allocation specifically for pension costs, and a $125 million non-Proposition 98 general fund to expand preschool with the goal of serving all low-income 4-year-olds by 2021-22. Given the concerns of BUSD, which were brought to the Assemblymember directly by the superintendent and members of the board, Assemblymember Friedman did submit a specific budget funding request to increase one-time funds to reduce pension costs to $4.8 billion. For districts like BUSD, the additional funds will allow the contribution rate to stay at 16.28%, which was the request that we received from BUSD, for 2 years instead of increasing to 17.1%. These seem like small numbers, small percentages, but they have real dollar and cents impacts to the district's budget, so we know that was an important request. So again, as Arda outlined, and I'm glad you've got that handout, but if there are folks watching at home, I'll just run through this quickly. The governor will be releasing his revised budget tomorrow, so we will be keeping a close eye on that and stay in communication with all of you about it. Both houses of the legislature will then enter into a kind of discussion over the next month as we head toward that June 15th deadline. So the next month will be a very important time, and we'll be watching these conversations very closely as they unfold. And then June 15th will be the day when we find out what's going to happen. So again, we look forward to working with all of you. The Assemblymember and the Assembly office are here to answer questions about the budget process. We're here to engage with each of you as this process unfolds, and we look forward to working with you. Now, if I could just take a moment of your time on a different topic, we also have a really wonderful announcement to make, and I'm so excited that we're able to do this week with all of you here. As you know, Burbank Arts for All is really one of the most outstanding charities, not just within the city of Burbank, but throughout the 43rd District, and heck, in California. Why hold back? This is just one of the best charities around. And I can say this because before I entered public life. I was working as a fundraiser for 15 years for nonprofits, so I know what I'm talking about here. And we are just thrilled to announce that Assemblymember Friedman will be bestowing the honor of Nonprofit of the Year. Oh, come on up here.
We're super honored. I mean, as a foundation, I mean, that we work really hard to try and do what we can, and it's just nice to be recognized.
Congratulations to you.
Well, to me, it's not just me. It's the board of directors, it's the volunteers, it's the donors, it's this community.
Yes.
I mean,
Yeah.
the school district, the partnership, all of everyone that engages in the support of arts education and creative economy in Burbank. I just couldn't thank you enough.
Well, congratulations, and we will see you in Sacramento on June 5th, when you will be honored at the state capitol as the nonprofit of the year. And so congratulations. Congratulations to all of you for your investment, not just in the school district, but specifically in the arts, and we look forward to staying in dialogue with all of you. Thanks.
Thank you very much for those updates and exciting news. Next, we'd like to welcome Superintendent Matt Hill to share an update on BUSD, and let him take it away.
I brought some slides. Do we have a clicker?
The mouse behind you, yeah, the slides, it should be queued up, so.
Okay.
We have very sophisticated technology.
Hunter, will you work it for him?
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
got it.
You sure?
Took me a second.
Thank you.
How many were at the State of the School or saw the State of the School presentation? All right. How many have read a BUSD news or anything like that? You're gonna get my speech in 5 minutes. It's not gonna be a 40-minute speech. And it's intentional. And the main reason why I'm being intentional about same talking points, different forms, different ways, is because we have to raise awareness and we have to advocate on behalf of public education. You just heard from our amazing elected representatives. They have an open door policy where we can sit down, have a conversation, listen to our needs, and advocate for us in Sacramento. That is not the norm. There are a lot of elected officials in this state that have a lot of good priorities, important priorities, but they're not focused on education because, one, they haven't kept up with how education has changed in California, how the funding has changed, and two, they feel like it's important to take care of needs after kids graduate from high school. So every person that you've met that's homeless had at least one day in school. Anyone that's been in prison most likely spent a day in public education. Anyone that can't get a job has spent time in public education. If we do not invest in public education, we see the results of that. So we need to be very clear about what are the facts, how we fund education, what's the results of education, and then how do we prevent some of these consequences that are so dire in our communities before they happen. How do we invest in public education? So the first day of school, every child knows that arts is important in our schools. We're one of the shining models of arts education in this state. But it is not a guarantee that every kindergarten child is gonna have access to music on day one. What kind of example are we telling our students or sharing? I mean, what are we setting? And we're the shining example. We are a national model in arts. And we have to fight and beg for every single dollar we can for that. And that goes for mental health and wellness. That goes to all the needs of our kids. So the site that Dr. Reynolds has been focusing on, that we're sharing far and wide, PTA, I know PTA is going to talk more about it, ed100.org, gives us modules that you can have facts. It's not just the superintendent or school board member or somebody else trying to say, oh, this is why we need funding. It's very clear, and you can take out one segment. So when people have questions, well, your schools are funded by the city. No, that's not how it works anymore. Read about Proposition 13 right here. The city is a partner with the school district now. We have amazing partnerships, but the funding that is generated in Burbank goes up to Sacramento and comes back down to us as school districts. It's very important to know that facts. So I just want to put a plug for ed100.org. The main reason we want to have that is that we have those same talking points and we show more of a unified front. This year we've done something very different in Burbank Unified School District. When we meet with our elected officials, we go together. So you will have Diana Basta, our Teachers Association president, you will have a board member, you'll have the superintendent, we want parents to join us, all going at the same time, because they all see a revolving door of us come through, and we have different talking points and different priorities. The priority in Burbank is very clear. Public education needs to be funded. And there's many solutions to get there, and we want to advocate for those solutions. And you heard some of those this morning, and you heard our elected officials listen, and they're advocating for us. Now we need to share those talking points as well. And the main reason is this silent recession. You will read every headline tomorrow that public education funding in California is at an all-time high. That is true. But what is also true, if you factor in inflation, we are back to 2007, 2008 levels. Think about your households. Think about the bills you have to pay for healthcare. Think about rent increases. Think about the cost of goods. If you get the same money and your costs are going up, you have to scale back. That's the silent recession. People need to understand that. Ed 100 can break that down about the various elements of what has created the situation we have. We are seeing it statewide. It has to change. And there's some good bills out there that we are advocating for that can help start that. They can start next year, and then we have bigger, audacious goals to actually get California funding back to where it should be. We should be the national average by 2020, and we should be back in the top 10 in the country by 2023, 2025. We need to have a vision and a path to get there. So we heard earlier from Assemblymember Friedman's office about how we have to address retirement costs in the state of California. And I'm gonna get the hook because I know I'm gonna go over 5 minutes. So you make sure. It's hard for me to stay in 5 minutes, I realize that.
Take your time, Superintendent.
All right, thank you. People try to blame teachers for a promise that wasn't kept by past elected officials. I'm personally sick of it. Teachers do not get Social Security. They do not have a retirement plan. You will hear CalSTRS, CalPERS, pension. That is retirement for public teachers, and CalPERS is for the support staff, the custodian, the office manager, etc. They have always paid their share out of their paycheck, just like others. So it used to be 7%, then it grew to 9, 9.25. Some are paying over 10% out of their paycheck. They're paying their contribution to their retirement. We do not get to determine how much that is. That is determined by the state. The state also tells the employer how much we have to pay in pension. The district, and I'll show a chart next, we used to pay 7%, and it keeps growing. And you can see now it went from 7 to 8.25, and it shot up to 19 levels at 16.28. And it keeps going up. So we heard in January that pension costs are going down. That's great, but that's from the blue line to the green line. And the letter of support from Assemblymember Friedman was to say, take one-time money and invest and bring that down to make it flat so that we can stop cutting. But beyond that, we need to raise the base that we saw with Senator Portantino so that we can start to bring this down to something realistic. School districts don't get to determine these rates. A big misunderstanding you can learn about Ed 100 is that cities could. Cities could determine how much employees paid, how much they got in retirement, and whether or not they paid the bill or not. School districts have always been told what to do. So this is not fiscal mismanagement. I don't read social media that much anymore, but I get the screenshots, and they send it to me. And thank you, Board Member Tabbitt. It's important to know the difference. School districts have not mismanaged the funds. We've paid what we've said. The third leg of that stool was the state, and the state relied on overly optimistic investment returns, and they kicked the can down the road. They did not pay their portion of this liability. And then when Governor Brown did pension reform, he's like, uh-oh, we gotta fix it. So they fixed it by pushing it down to school districts. Income level the same, inflation adjusted, costs going through the roof. What does that mean for a school district? And this is school districts all across the state. So instead of $7 million a year, we're gonna be paying over $16 million a year. That's $9 million ongoing every year. That's equivalent of 7% raise for our employees. In the parcel tax, we had $1.6 million for the arts. That would have helped us realize our 3-year arts plan. So of that $9 million, we could have taken $1.3 million and made sure that every child had music instruction, kindergarten through grades 5. We could have expanded the arts in our secondary schools. We could have addressed our instrument repair that's over $1 million. That's just with 1.6 of that 9 million. That's how impactful this is. We have to take one-time revenue and buy down this debt. And it's not our current elected officials, don't get me wrong. It was past decisions, past promises that need to be fulfilled. I read an article recently about new IPOs. So if they all go through with Lyft, Uber, and Airbnb this year, there will be at least $1 billion of new revenue for California. We cannot make the mistake that past elected officials did during the .com. They would take IPO money and put on ongoing programs, and then we cut the heck out of them when we hit the recession. They need to take that $1 billion, just like the letter said, and buy down this debt. When you get a raise, you buy down your credit card debt. We need to do that at the state level. That's something we can all advocate for. The other thing that has changed for us, and you can learn about this in Ed 100, is how things have changed about school districts. I have a doctorate in social justice. I support local control funding formula 100%. But we have to realize that districts like LA Unified, Inglewood, others are getting more money now to meet the needs of their kids. That is absolutely correct. It should happen that way. You have wealthier communities that pass local taxes, parcel taxes. So you can see in LA Unified and San Marino are keeping up to give the same needs to their kids. Then you have middle-class communities like Burbank and Glendale. They have to decide what to do next. Do we continue to cut back programs, not give raises, just to live within the budget we have? Or do we do two things? You can do a local measure that focuses on education that stays here, so we can keep up with our surrounding districts, or you continue to advocate. But the bills we heard about increasing the base, that's the blue line, that will push up all districts. So we need to do that so that all districts, all children in California have a better education. But we also have to do something locally. So the support of the community here, foundation support has been amazing. We have to do that every single year. We have to look at local measures, and we have to decide as a community, what path do we want? Do we want ongoing local revenue? Or do we want to cut the things that we value and we talk about and get awarded about? People tell me teachers get paid too much. I said this at State of the Schools. You've never been a teacher, you've never been in a classroom. It's Teacher Appreciation Week. Teachers are striking across this country because they are disrespected over and over and over again. We have to change that narrative. Teachers are the core of a community. We have to invest in our teachers. In order to balance the budget here in Burbank over the last 3 years, we have not compensated our teachers well. We are at the bottom in the county. Next 3 years is going to be the same or worse. So now we're stuck at this situation where do you cut your way so you can pay your teachers? That's a death spiral for our community. I'll talk about the cuts in a second. We're facing $3.5 million of cuts this year. When the measure failed in November, people were like, go ahead and cut your way out of it, it's okay. Cut elementary music, that's an add-on. So we were going to propose cutting elementary music. I already said how it's an insult that a kindergarten is not greeted with music the first day of school. In Burbank, we're lucky it's second grade, or lucky at each school site's at raising money to be able to provide it younger. With this proposal, we were gonna have to cut second and third grade music. It's green now, and it's good news. I want to take a moment and celebrate, because I don't want to be too dark. Burbank Arts for All Foundation, $100,000. Burbank Educational Foundation, $80,000. Lurie Family Foundation, $65,000. Roosevelt Booster, $25,000. Kiwanis Club, $5,000. This community has risen up to the challenge to save our music program. It's amazing. That's 1 year. And we're still having cuts. The reorganization of the district office is cutting our arts department in half. It's sad we have 2 people in an arts department. For a nationally award-winning arts department, we're cutting it in half, going from 2 to 1. We're cutting over $700,000 out of the district office. We're cutting supports for schools. We're cutting teachers on special assignment. Those are not luxury items. That's the core of what education should be. We're cutting that. We applied for grants at the state level to support our career technical education pathways. So instead of cutting 2 to 3 courses, which our kids need hands-on, we're able to keep that for another year and a grant. We're fundraising Burbank Educational Foundation. On top of the music, there's additional money that can be used as a priority. Board has to consider on the list what are the other priorities, but helping kids stay at reading levels and staying at math levels is a top priority the board has expressed, but they will review that when we get the funding coming in. This is not a fat, bloated district. All of our information is public. We want to have dialogues like this. We want you to ask the hard questions so we can decide as a community, what's the vision we want to have for our kids? Do we want to cut the heck out of our schools and just get by? Do we not want to pay our teachers well and say they're lucky to work in Burbank? No, we're lucky to have our teachers in Burbank. The narrative has to change. What is the vision we want to have for the next 12 years for our kids? That's what we have to work together. We have to debate, we have to disagree, and then we have to unify and we have to advocate. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think that presentation was well worth going over 5 minutes. So now we'd like to welcome some of our incredible parent groups to come speak. So I'd like to invite Carol Briggs, the current president of the Council PTA.
Gee, thanks, Matt. Okay, so they asked me to talk a little bit on advocacy. I'm here with representing Burbank Council PTA. We advocate. That's our number one thing. So I want to talk a little bit about that. And I'm going to go through the process of what PTA does in order to advocate. And it's probably something most of you have not heard before. So Burbank Council PTA is part of California PTA. And that in turn is part of National PTA. We're not just this little organization that's here floating all by ourselves. We belong to a national organization. Did you know that California PTA is California's largest advocacy association? And it works to improve the lives of children, all children, and families. The largest organization in California. And we're volunteer, right? I don't get paid. I'm doing this for fun. All right, our local schools, we call them units. When we have a PTA in a local school, we call a unit. There are 16 of them here in the city of Burbank. Burbank Council PTA organizes those 16. And we can apply advocacy to all of our actions there. And in PTA, we say every child with one voice. So we advocate for all of our children, and that includes arts, and it includes education of reading or whatever it might be, special education, any of those things. We work for all of them. Unit and council PTAs are responsible for taking action on local issues as well. So we might have California that will take action on state issues, but our local organizations take part and advocate in our local areas. However, we cannot use the PTA name without PTA authority. So as a local organization in the city of Burbank, I can advocate and use PTA's name if it's something that the state PTA has already decided to support. If something is a local initiative, we have to go through the process to give PTA authority to be able to advocate for that. So if there is an adopted organization, We can follow through and use their, it might be the late start that is going on, it might be various different things that are happening that state California PTA has said, yes, we're gonna support this. On a local level, if there's no prior PTA authority, what do we have to do to get to that and get PTA authority? The local level has to decide we're gonna do a study. And in our case, last year, Burbank Council PTA decided to do a study on something called, it was gonna be an initiative in our local area called Measure QS. What do we do when we do a study? Well, there's a lot of things involved. We have to do a lot of research. We have to study people that are saying, yes, this is what we want to do, and people that are saying, no, we don't like this initiative. We also go through, we have to answer questions, and their PTA has 21 legislative planks. Those are questions, and each of those questions is focused on how will this affect the children? Will this be right for the children? And we go through question by question and analyze them. So when you get an authorization from PTA and PTA advocates for something, it's not just, oh yeah, let's do it. It takes time. And then on top of that, after we've conducted this study, we have to take the study results back to the association, the members of PTA, and we vote on that. Do we want to support this initiative, support this local idea? Do we want to oppose it, or do we want to take no action on it? And that's the three choices we have. So, you might remember, PTA did support Measure QS last year, this year. And there might be something in the future. If something happens in the future, PTA cannot endorse it until we've gone through these steps. So it's it's an in-depth process when we go through these steps. I give you this background so that you understand PTA endorsement is not automatic. And it is a big deal when PTA endorses something. It does mean that somebody's really looked into it, and people that are looking into it aren't getting paid. They're not going to benefit from it. They're doing it for the children, and they're doing it for all the children, for the benefit of all the children. What does this have to do with Burbank? Well, as an advocacy organization, we can't support an initiative until we've been through this process. But we can encourage our community to become educated about the basic problem, and that problem in this case is public education funding. So, working within the guidelines of PTA, we are encouraging our community to become educated. Guess how? This one's going to be new, right? Well, we ask you to do one of the things that's very simple, Ed 100. There's a website, there's flyers out there, and you've probably heard of it, right? Just recently. But Ed 100 is free, and it's self-paced, and it's online. And you can go at your own your own time limit at 2 in the morning, in your pajamas, whatever you want to do for this. We're challenging our presidents, the presidents that are ending their term and the presidents that are beginning their term. This is their summer project, because we all have more time in summertime. But we're challenging them to go through this. I guarantee you'll learn things. I've learned things. People that have a lot of knowledge have already learned things. We have a recent graduate. Did you learn anything?
I did.
I didn't write it. I have no knowledge for that. I mean, this is a lot of information, and it's a whole panel that worked together and wrote this. But this talks about the fast-changing public education and the funding in California for schools. It is not all the same. It's rotating and changing all the time. There's things going on. But we're asking our community members, our parents and our teachers, to go through, sign up for Ed 100. When you sign up for Ed 100, you designate a school that can actually win something for your efforts. You can choose a Burbank school, and they need to have 2 people that have signed up in their school and have taken some classes, and they have a drawing. They're trying to encourage people to do this. And your school that you have designated can earn up to $1,000 from drawings. And that's pretty neat. That'll help the school with a lot of different things. But we're asking right now that you do this and become educated. You can become informed, and you can become credible, and you can be ready to take action. You can be ready, if there is something in the future for Burbank, to answer questions that will come up, because we know there's a lot of questions that come up about parcel tax, a lot of information that's new that we don't all know about the funding. People have a lot of different ideas and misconceptions about how things work. So we ask you to use your time and advocate for children. And at this point, we're asking you to advocate by increasing your knowledge.
Thank you, Carol. Next, I'd like to welcome Jen Lurie, the president of the Burbank Schools Boosters Association.
Thank you for having me and BSBA come and talk. BSBA stands for Burbank Schools Boosters Association. Burbank Schools Boosters Association started about 16 years ago now, almost, in 2003 by some people at the district to help booster groups that were beginning to form, or parent groups at the site level who were trying to raise funds for their programs at their site. Over time, Burbank Schools Boosters kind of faded into the limelight, but all these booster clubs continued to operate for many, many years, and additional things started happening under this organization, and nobody was really watching it. There was a group who was assigned every year to come sign the taxes and meet once a year to do the business of the BSBA, but every group got to pretty much operate on our own. Cut to about 2013, there was a lot of us parents who were working in our site level booster clubs, trying to raise funds, making sure we were doing the right thing, and wondering if we were legitimately doing it. We didn't really know about BSBA at the time, and it was groups from all over Burbank Unified, all different school sites. All parents were coming together going, who are we? What are we doing? Are we able to do this? And we found out about BSBA, and we were wondering if we were involved, and how do we operate legitimately. At the same time, the IRS rules were changing for nonprofits. At the same time, the state rules were getting more strict and changing for nonprofits. At the same time, we had some lawsuits come through regarding public school fees and how things are able to be charged for raising funds for student programs. We got together as parent volunteers with the school district and set a meeting to discuss our situation and to make sure we were able to continue fundraising programs at our sites legitimately, safely, protectedly. We created a task force of parents who worked for over a year, asking the community for help from Burbank business partners, and Warner Brothers participated to help us right the ship, so to speak, and make sure that we were protecting ourselves and protecting our funding so that we can continue to raise funds for student programs. At that time, we had 7 people on board. People came in and out. Within a year, we were able to set true bylaws and get all our groups organized to make sure every group was a legitimate booster club that was operating, and we worked towards a sustainable path and began working with BUSD to make sure that we could continue to provide safe platform to raise funds. We are now in a situation where Burbank Schools Boosters has put in place trainings and programs and compliance packets with BUSD to make sure that everybody is in place, but the leadership is not stepping up to continue this all-volunteer organization. We've reached out and tried to collect board members and get new people to be involved, but as an organization, we can't continue in the manner that we are. At the same time, we're very concerned about parental and volunteer liability. And when you're in a separate booster club under BSBA or even your own 501c3, as you operate for the benefit of a public school program, there's a lot of rules and regulations with California Ed Code and board policy, along with the IRS and state code. And there's a lot of insurance and legal issues. So that was putting our parents into some predicaments if they were not understanding the gravity of what we are working within. And then also, at the same time now, we are in a climate where funding and how we get funds for providing public school programs is changing as a whole. And so we began to work very diligently with BUSD last year to come up with a purely sustainable program to help continue fundraising at the site level and providing all the programs that donors are providing. but to have it be able to be sustainable in a protected base ongoing. We have shifted now to what we're calling a Burbank Unified School District Fundraising Committee platform. So fundraising will not go away for site levels. It pretty much will actually be operating in the same manner that it has been operating. Parent volunteers, donor bases, everybody, the community is desperately needed to do all of the programs and the day-to-day work of raising funds and providing all these programs, with the difference of having the funding go directly to the sustainable entity, Burbank Unified School District. Burbank Unified School District will then be able to actually see what their programs are costing, what programs are happening more easily on their sites, and how that funding is coming in and where it's coming from and how much it is. And that will help make for a more efficient and beneficial scenario to balance budgets, make sure that programs are full of equity and excellence, as the Burbank Unified motto speaks to. We have been working with the school district since the beginning of this calendar year on a weekly basis with representation from principals and booster parents and BSBA board members, district officials, to fine-tune a system to be able to continue operating and fundraising as we have been. And that is getting rolled out right now to our elementary level last night, our secondary level, middle school and high school next Tuesday, and we're working to make sure that all of this can continue happening while these groups are able to shift over to a community-based platform. One of the things I want to make sure that we explain, because I believe that Burbank Schools Boosters has done a lot of great work. The parent volunteers that have stepped up on the board level, a few of whom are here today, Anna Connell and Amy Cam also, worked really hard to try to make sure that we could sustain funding and sustain support for parents. And we put in a lot of things in place that will continue for Burbank Unified fundraising. And I fully believe that this system will be excellent for all schools, all program levels, embracing it, and it will benefit Burbank Unified as a whole.
So BSBA still exists?
BSBA will probably be dissolving, but it'll exist for another year, and we can go on.
There's an FAQ back here. It's currently 12 pages long, so if you are a parent booster person, you can get that from the way out. They can answer that.
There's also information going up on the Burbank Schools Boosters website, which is burbankschoolsboosters.com. And anytime you need to reach out to us, we are at boosters@burbankschoolsboosters.org. Sorry, I said the website wrong. It's burbankschoolsboosters.org also. So I'm happy to answer any questions and talk about anything, but I do want to, my last thought is to pull from Dr. Hill's comment about, the narrative is changing right now, that we need to discuss and work together and unify and come to a whole to advocate for kids in a manner that will benefit the greater good, and I think we can be very successful doing that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jen, and thank you to all the speakers we've had so far for providing all of this amazing, incredible information to help everyone understand where we're at and how we're getting there. I'd like to now welcome up the Foundation's Executive Director to talk a little bit about how the Foundation is responding to all of these financial changes. Happening. Hello. Let's scoot over this way.
Hi, I'm just going to take a quick moment because we want to get into the actionable steps and things that you can do to move things forward. So we are a partner with BUSD and have been and will be. So even though it's great that the elementary music teachers were saved from the budget cuts, but we understand that there are a lot more things that we need to do. And one of the reasons why we're having this conversation here today. We want to have exactly what Jen Lurie said. We all need to come together as a community and support BUSD in any way that we can. We announced in February the $100,000 grant that we just gave, which was the largest grant that we've ever given. But we also have a fall grant cycle that's coming up in September, which we will be providing grant support to school site levels. And then we also have an RFP for funding through the City of Burbank's Arts and Public Places Ordinance. We have a great partnership with the city through that. And so that application will be rolling out in the next week. We're currently obviously raising money through our Give Instead Gala and our silent auction, which is a few days left. But really our focus is how can we help more? How can we convene more? What can we do to support the district, the parents, the teachers? For us, it's all about the kids. And so that's our plan moving forward. Yep.
The Arts and Public Places funding, can you explain why we have to meet the same requirements as a developer?
So the Arts and
ordinance itself reads that it's to support Burbank Unified Arts programming.
Right, we're restricted by the use of the use of the money, so that the way that the money is given to the city of Burbank and then given to us, we are in alignment with those restrictions. So the same.
The MOU, your MOU is the only place that it says that we have to meet the same standards as a developer.
That's correct. So it's through that MOU. So that's the way that. So we have a memorandum of understanding with the city of Burbank. A developer can choose to give 0.5% of the development fee to the foundation to support Arts and Public Places Ordinance projects within the school district. So it's really restricted to, hold on one second, it's really restricted to what a developer would do. So like there's a statue in front of a development building, or if there's a work of art that's in the area, there's a lot of requirements, which is why it's requiring a special application to make sure that we're in alignment with our MOU and with the Arts and Public Places Ordinance.
The link between BAFA and the district and the city in the Arts and Public Places Ordinance. Arts and Public Places Ordinance, and Councilman Springer, jump in anytime. It requires any development that's over $500,000 to dedicate 1% of that total budget to either a project that is public, durable, weather resistant, blah, 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 right? On their site, or that money can go 100% into the city's Arts and Public Places Fund, which develops like the statues,
lots of various things,
park and things like
throughout
that.
the city.
And then in 2008, we wrote.
So Peggy, it's a very technical conversation. I know we have a couple other presenters, so maybe we can say that towards the end. And
I would encourage you guys to research that.
Yeah, we have. So if you have any questions about it, the application will be coming out in the next couple of weeks. We're aligning it with our fall grant cycle that's coming up. So please feel free to ask questions regarding that. And I think the next speaker, you wanted to do something.
Yes, so next we're going to talk about some advocacy steps that you can take today or this week or whatever you'd like that are simple, easy, positive, and actionable. So I'd like to welcome up parent volunteers Paula Trubisky and Caroline Solberg.
Hi, I'm supposed to very quickly highlight 3 actions that you can take now to maintain funding in arts education considering our community. First of all, tell your story. Tell everyone and anyone about the BUSD budget crisis and what it means for our students and for maintaining arts education. Talk to your neighbors, talk to business leaders, talk to city leaders and to state lawmakers. Personalize your story by highlighting the difference arts education is making to your child's education. For example, do you feel arts education improved your child's reading or math skills, better prepared them for college and career, increased your child's excitement about schools, or made them more empathetic to peers? If yes, highlight this in your story. These are all critical areas where BUSD needs to improve student outcomes. 2, advocate for local funding that's inclusive of arts education and programs. As you know, the district is gathering information about whether they should put another parcel tax on the ballot. It's time-consuming and it takes much work to understand how to balance the education needs with other community interests and will impact the board's decisions on such issues as how to raise, how much money to raise, and the best strategic use of those funds to serve Burbank students. Now, as Matt called a few minutes ago, it's the time for you to speak up about education programs that are important to you. Ask questions about what the revenue will be used for, how the use of funds will improve student outcomes, how the district will be held accountable. If you have concerns, express those concerns. Ask about how we compare with other districts in raising local revenue for our schools. And third, we need to continue to advocate, as you've heard so well today, for increased state revenues for our school district. The reality is that Burbank receives approximately 93% of its revenue from the state. And our community must continue to raise awareness about the inadequacy of state funding for educating our students and highlight opportunities for our lawmakers who staff members did a wonderful job presenting earlier today, how they can make a difference. For example, you heard that these lawmakers are going to receive a revised spending plan with new data on current revenue projections by tomorrow morning. You can make a difference by contacting your lawmaker today and encourage them, for example, to preserve 2 key aspects requested by the governor. You can, Assemblywoman Friedman has already done one of them, and you can thank her for that. And that is to request to use state surplus to help the district pay down rising debt obligations. If they stick with the governor's original request, it will help BUSD pay down its pension obligations and add $700,000 to BUSD budgets this year. The second item is to preserve the governor's request to increase the local controlled funding formula's cost of living adjustment by 3.46%. This could add an additional $1 million in funds to BUSD's budget this year. Now, I heard you mention from Assemblywoman Friedman's office that there is in the governor's budget special education funds. Something to keep in mind and for our community to keep in mind is Burbank doesn't have access to those funds. I also think you heard a couple of important things that we need to be watching in the future that they mentioned, such as SB 217 and SB 39. Those are important for us to be looking forward to be looking at how we as a community can support that and raise our voices to help in their efforts. Thank you.
I am going to be repeating some things and some things will be a little bit new. Just as our children need things repeated several times for them to take them in, I think these are worth repeating, and so bear with me. To me, there are 3 steps in advocating. The first is to educate yourself, and there are many ways you can do it. What is to read? For example, Ed 100. There's a flyer back there. Read and learn. Here's another one. How is a bill passed? Flyers back there. Read, learn. Here, budget time. These are important. Read and learn. Meet people. Ask questions. Attend meetings. Listen. Ask questions. When I started at the kindergarten level, I didn't even know what a booster club was. And so I went to the meeting every month and sat there until I understood what it was. And then you can ask questions. Mine was, oh my goodness, 8 of you raised this much money. Replay this presentation. There's a lot of valuable information in this presentation. Replay it, take notes. For me, when I did Ed 100, I opened up a Word doc, and every time I found something that I didn't know, I put it in that Word doc, because Now I can go back, I had participated in enough meetings that there was a lot of information I didn't know, and so what was significant to me was what I didn't know, and I set that aside. Read the Burbank Arts for All plan. You can find that on the district website. This is a really helpful document, also listed back there, that Burbank Arts for All put together about ways you can get involved. Your school site council, attend LCAT meetings. If you can't attend an LCAT meeting, they're streamed. You can play them back.
There's one tonight.
Yes.
Yes.
Big one. Town hall tonight.
Look at the data on how arts education benefits students. That is in, again, a flyer on the back table. We'll give you some of that information. The one that starts out advocacy steps you can take. There's a site called createcalifornia.net, has fabulous information about arts and its impact. The education committee, it's just like, and some of you know this, some of you may not, and I share this just through sidewalk talks I've had with other parents. Just as in Washington, D.C., you've got a Senate and a House of Representatives, at Sacramento, you have a Senate and an Assembly. And both, you have a representative each, and we've met those representatives today. In addition, there's an education committee in both houses. And you can go to their website and find out what's on their agenda. What are they discussing right now? That's another great way to educate yourself. Step 2, what is your story? Paula talked about that a little bit. I'm going to give you an example of my friend's story. Her daughter was in kindergarten, and at our elementary school, in kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade, they do a grade level choral performance. And so 120 kids up there on risers doing a performance. In kindergarten, she begged her mother not to go to school that day. Please, Mom, don't let me go to school. I don't want to do it. And Mom said, okay. 1st grade came. She went, Mom, please don't make me go to school. Mom said, this is forming a bad habit, and called the teacher. Teacher said, that's a bad habit, send her to school. Teacher sat down with her and said, I'm going to put a chair backstage, and I'm going to put a chair on stage. And you can start out backstage, and I would like you to sing backstage. No one will see you. And if you feel comfortable, you can come on stage. The presentation began. She started out backstage. About midway through, she came out and she joined her peers. In 2nd grade, she auditioned to be one of the students to introduce the songs. She had gotten to the point where she could speak publicly. She had a voice, she had confidence to speak publicly, and that is what this art experience did for her. So what was it in your life, or what was in your child's life that made a difference, and use that person's story. So how can you use your story? There's a meeting tonight, a town hall meeting, an LCAP meeting, where they are going to discuss the summary of what has gone on this year, as well as board goals for next year. That would be a great place for you to share your story. Talk to other parents and members of the community about the budget crisis. Talk to your neighbor. Talk to when you're standing on the sidewalk waiting to pick up your kids. Share the information you have with them. And when you're sharing it, you now have an understanding. And because of that, you're able to put it in terms that they can understand it. And that's often easier for them to grasp than simply reading something online. Burbank Arts for All has a Facebook page. Burbank Unified has a Facebook page. Those are 2 great places, as well as their websites, to look up information to find out if there are going to be awareness campaigns that you can join to get the word out. So keep an eye on those 2 places. The school board has Ed Walks once a month. That's a great opportunity for you to go and meet with our school board members and share with them on a first-hand basis, this is what I'm concerned about. The school board, California School Board Associations has a petition where they're asking the Sacramento, please raise that base level, please fund public education. It's called Full and Fair Funding, and the website is fullandfairfunding.org. You can sign that petition. Contact your senator, your assemblyman, contact the education committees. You can go back to this flyer that's over there. It will talk about what how you find out who your representative is, what the email address is or the website is to contact them. The education committees now have set up something new so that You go to their website, and there's a submit button, and you can send one letter, and they will send it to all the education committees. So you don't have to write 8 letters or 5 letters or however many are on that committee. You can send one, and it will be distributed. Again, that information is on this document. They are our representatives. If in order to represent us, they need to know how we feel. So we need to share with them what we're concerned about. Burbank Arts for All has a blog. That's a great place to share your story. School site council meetings is a great way to find out what's going on and share your concerns. LCAP meetings, meeting with your principal, asking for your school site, to see your school site arts plan, finding out what their hopes and desires are for the future. And one of the ways you can contribute there is what are they interested in funding, and maybe you can do the research on what grants are out there that they might be able to apply for. So these are a few things you can do. Good luck. Important work, please do it.
All right, Superintendent Hill, would you like to join me up here? We're gonna now get into the Q&A session. So this is
everybody else.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Everybody else can come up. Whatever. I just wanted to make it more of a circle.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes, Jenny.
I'm a parent at Disney Elementary, and on the heels of education and getting informed, I just really want to acknowledge 3 superior volunteers in this room before BSBA is completely dissolved, because as a parent, you know, as a booster president as well, along with all the other BSBA parent groups, we've raised millions every year for the arts. And oftentimes BSBA would be looked at as, oh, they're just creating these rules, they're doing this. They were educating us, they were protecting the parents so we could do our jobs and raise money for the arts. So thank you to Anna Connell, to Amy Cam, and to Jen Lurie for shepherding us. And
for those of you at home, we just acknowledge the leadership of BSBA for their incredible work over the past 4 or 5 years. 5.5 years of amazing work. Thank you very much. Next question.
In talking about...
Yeah. That's what you call in the theater community a prep call. I won't lean on that again.
Speaking of telling your story.
We'll be taking donations for a new desk.
Right, exactly.
California funding can't even have That's going to go viral, by the way.
And it's on camera.
But in the telling your story genre, I think in this age of hashtags, it's very important that all of those can be coalesced across the state, across the internet. I just checked Instagram, and hashtag arts impact only has 500 posts right now. So if we hijack that hashtag
arts impact.
Every story you tell, it doesn't matter if it's Facebook, your own blog, on Instagram, hashtag arts impact, and then you can send people to that so that they can read other people's stories. And I think it's important at this moment where you're developing this to kind of maybe do that.
Tell your story. So tell your story, hashtag arts impact, maybe hashtag education impact.
Yeah, you're welcome to create a new hashtag of your own.
Create a new hashtag, education
impact. A way
impact.
to just consolidate all these stories.
For sure. Paula.
And I think what's so valuable about this room is there's many people in here who have the knowledge of arts education, and you can use that knowledge to create your story and to advocate for education as a whole for more funding.
Sure.
It's because that's what you know, so use it.
Could I just build on
that?
Sarojini. Speaking on behalf of the Assembly Office, and I'm guessing that Arda would second this, we love hearing from individual parents, individual members of the community on what's important to them, and we're always here to listen. it's especially helpful when you aggregate your voices and speak through the PTA, speak through a booster club, speak through the unified school district. And I think that what the superintendent said was very important about coming together with a unified voice.
Yes.
The more that you aggregate your voices, the stronger position the assembly member is in when she goes to advocate for the issues that you need addressed in the school district or in the city. So please don't hesitate to pull yourselves together, even if it's just a group of parents who want to write a letter, 5 or 6 parents, about something that's important to them. Putting your voices together amplifies your voices and helps us in the district office to take things up to the Capitol as well. So that's
so for those of you at home, that's a state representative asking for folks to contact their state legislature, to tell your story, to come together as a community, even in an aggregate of 5 to 6 parents, or as together with Burbank Unified, to make sure that the voices of the people are heard for the state legislatures to make a difference at the state level. Is that fair? Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. So I'm gonna ask 2 questions. First of all, can you talk to the problem with grant funding that the state continues to offer as a solution versus actual funding for the schools, and why that is not a solution? And can you also talk about, it's hypothetical, if there is not more funding, if we don't have some kind of tax that comes up here, what does the state of our school look like in the worst case scenario in 3 to 5 years?
So the question was, can Superintendent Hill talk about grant funding at the state level and how that is not sustainable for school district? And then if for some reason a parcel tax or a local tax does not pass, then what happens to Burbank Unified School District?
So first is Governor Brown, as he recovered through the recession, was very uncertain about ongoing revenues. And so he had a very conservative approach to his January budgets. What would happen, it would be in May, if revenues came in, there'd be more money. But a lot of times he couched those as one-time funds. What he did with the one-time funds, though, is here, you give it to the school district, and you can use that for textbooks, you can use that, anything you want, professional development, music, and arts, and others. So school districts got into a situation, because this was several years, of using one-time grant funds to try to fund ongoing expenses. That's not sustainable. And they were going to propose that last year, and I want to give a big shout out to Senator Portantino. His bill of saying we have to stop with the one-time funds. We need to put that into an increased COLA, a cost of living adjustment. That's ongoing revenue. Now, it impacted us a lot as a school district last year because he wasn't able to accomplish everything he wanted on that. So we lost money for 3 years, but there's ongoing money going there. But it set a standard now. So now you have Governor Newsom that did his January budget. He's like, I'm done with one-time grants for school districts. If we need one-time funding, we buy down debt, and that turns into ongoing revenue for us. And he's pushing for more COLA. And we heard Senate Bill 729 is a proposal to increase the cost of living adjustment. So cost of living adjustment is just to keep up with inflation. But with our rising expenses, that goes away, so we can't even give a cost of living adjustment, which is the second point to your question. You saw the chart where teachers were at the bottom of the county in funding. We did a scenario, if we did just a minimum of 2% a year for our employees, our teachers and our employees, we would have to cut $2 to $3 million every year. 2% is not even inflation. A COLA right now is over 3% cost of living adjustment. So that's just staying below inflation. We're cutting $2 to $3 million a year. So if we don't get any new revenue coming in from the state level or a local level, we're cutting $3 million a year. You already saw the cuts. That means all of music is back on the table. We're starting to talk about elementary PE. We're going to start talking about reducing our career and technical education. When you cut $3 million a year in a school district, you get the basics. You get high class sizes, and you teach math and English and a little bit of science if you get time to it. That's what funding looks like when you're bottom in the country. So we need to focus on 2 things. Get that base up there so we can have quality education for all kids in California. But second, if we only focus at the state level, you will see surrounding districts continue to rise above us, and that's where our employees are going to go. Teachers can go to LA Unified and get over $12,000 more than Burbank. It's a harder working condition, but eventually they have to pay their bills and pay their rent.
I've been inspired about the tell your story, so I'm going to start for a quick moment about that.
Yeah.
Sunday night, I went with my family to see.
Do you want to come here so people at home can see you?
Well,
Otherwise I have to repeat your story, and it's better coming from you.
Okay. Hi, I'm Elisa Hemingway, and I'm a parent at Burroughs and at Bret Hart Elementary School. And on Sunday night, I went with my family to see the Jerry Herman Awards in Hollywood to be a supporter of the amazing art program at Burroughs, where we were nominated for, if you are not aware, for Best Production for West Side Story, as well as Best Orchestration.
Implementation of our arts law
And
plan.
so when I hear about what's the number, Matt, of instrumental music repair, $1 million, and how we can win. We won Best Orchestra, playing West Side Story with a student band. It's phenomenal. And as well as not knowing until that very moment that night what 2 students would be up for from the 37 schools that are in the program. 2 students from each student are nominated for Best Actor. We swept Best Actor and Best Actress competing against schools that are private schools, that are county schools for the arts. This is arts education and having elementary music teachers and programs and orchestra that we don't even start until high school. I don't think we have an orchestra, just band. So for me, the arts are just present every day, and I'm just so proud of this district and the community and Mr. Jennings and Mr. Myers and our tech crew and John King. It was an honor and inspiring to be there and share that moment. But what I see is not just the funding of money, which I know we need, but for me, when I see these kids who I am so inspired, is time. And these students, and it has become kind of a mission of mine as I have a student who's entered high school, of learning and seeing, why are these kids going to summer school? Why do we have 900 Burroughs students starting at 7 a.m. for a 0 period? Because there's no time for the arts in their schedule to meet the A through G requirements, as well as participate in student government, tech crew, photo, arts, anything, that it's just not possible. And I think that not only do we have to look at the funding, but also the time and the structuring of our school day to allow the arts to not be an extra, that the student who wants art and the reason that they go to school and that motivates them to be there, to be the reason that they have to be there at 7 a.m. as Ms. Magical has presented in her presentations, that they're going from 7 a.m. to 12:17 with a 9-minute break. 9-minute break, 900 students at Burroughs are at 0 period. And look at our top of the tribe students at Burroughs. Look at the students who are going to college and see how many of them went to summer school. They're not going to summer school because they're our underperforming, they are our overperforming students. These are the students who are applying to college. These are the students that are taking social studies or Spanish in the summer so that they can take tech crew, so that they can be in choir. And I think that not only is it funding of time, of money, but it is of time, and that we need to relook at how we're not serving our students to participate in the arts. This is an issue for dual immersion students, which our district has committed to being a part of, which they will be entering high school in 3 years, as they have entered 6th grade this year, being told you can't take an elective if you want to take your dual immersion class. This is a problem for our academy students in the medical and the engineering program that cannot take an elective. This is not an elective, this is not an extra, this is essential. And whether it's a 7th period in our 8 to 3 day following our Monday schedule, allowing for another period without additional funding, something needs to be done so that this can be part of their day, so that we can go to and prepare students for higher education within our own state, of the state of California, to go to Cal State Fullerton, to go to UC Irvine. I'm not talking about Harvard and Ivy League across the country. I'm talking about higher education in the state of California, that they cannot take an electives and graduate from a California public school with those minimum requirements. It's unacceptable. And I think that time is the other part of this puzzle. And I hope that
this is for, I guess, Matt, Dr. Hill.
Dr. Hill.
I'm Liz Bax, a parent at Burroughs and at Jordan. I'm going to piggyback on what Elisa Hemingway just said. I just heard you mention something about still thinking about cutting CTE programming, and I mean, my child's at school 12 hours a day minimum in her CTE program. And cutting that program is going to lessen the kids that are able to do that and increase the hours she will be working, as she calls it. But the other question I really have is regarding A through G requirements, and we were able to, I believe, with the help of Peggy, make it so that with the A through G requirements, the F requirement for stage crew is being fulfilled by taking stagecraft.
It's considered a part of our art pathway.
Yes, and it's an F requirement fulfilled. They do not have to take an extra class to meet that F requirement. But BUSD does not say that it's a fine arts fulfillment. So they now have to also take another fine arts class to fulfill that.
It's a practical art.
Well, why is stagecraft not a practical art?
No,
it should be a fine art.
practical
They
art.
are involved in choir, they are involved in dance, they are involved in drama, and so much more.
That's
And-
a state definition, I believe.
Well, anyway, that's my question to Matt Hill, because they are trying so hard to, as Elisa said, my daughter takes summer school, online courses, and will be taking 0 period to try to make it through everything. Thank you.
So there's two main questions in that. One was around the comment I made about the future if we don't receive additional funding. Would career technical education be a potential cut? It would. That's how bad funding is in California, and that's how bad it's impacting us. What I got feedback from last time, like you tried to sugarcoat where we were. I focused a lot on the vision of where we wanted to go as a school district last time. If you invest in our kids in this community, we can expand career technical education pathways. The feedback I have is to be very honest. I'm gonna be very candid. If we do not get increased funding from the state and local level, we will not have the robust program we have of career technical education, and we won't be able to expand it. The partial tax last time was about 1/3 was gonna be able to get our teachers a bump of 3% so that we at least start getting towards the median. 1/3 was gonna go to protect programs like career technical education and the arts, and 1/3 was gonna grow it. If we don't have new funding, all of those things won't happen. The second around the A to G is the California UC Regents. They determine how we identify courses and what's applied or not. You have to apply for it, so there's technicalities on that. So that's why some things can be A to G and not A to G, and then also what category they fall in there, your fine art or practical art. But I'll work with Peggy and Sharon. That's what we've been determined by the state.
Yeah.
But we always ask the question, it's like, well, why can't we do both? Why can't? So I don't have a problem asking that. I just want to set expectations that we've been told it's a practical art, and we're pleased that now it's on the A to G pathway.
Yeah.
Linda.
Yeah, it's approved by the UC. It's just not approved by BUSD.
So I'll double check.
Yeah.
That's a good question.
We'll look at it. Linda?
Well, my first is a statement of fact.
Okay.
Music education makes better readers. I have 48 years to prove that. And there is no doubt about a quality music program making a child a better reader. That's just fact. And my second one, I'd like a little more continued conversation on the partnership with Art in Public Places and the city, and how more of the money that is put into that could be driven to arts education, which in my opinion, in the end, would end up creating a better arts environment in our whole city. How that, I know it sounded, isn't there a simple way? My understanding was as if you build something, you have to put an art piece out, or you can give the money to the arts.
The city.
To the city, which in turn, would there be an easier way to drive funding to make it more interesting to the person building something to want to fund arts education?
I just wanted to say how it was first established. That was one of the ways that we partnered with the city and one of many ways that we were looking to make the arts kind of state budget proof. one of the things that we did was started the Arts for All Foundation. And Michelle Crozer from Warner Brothers is who established all of this, and working with City Council in 2008, that was when the option to check the box for 1/2 of the 1% to go into the Burbank Arts for All Foundation. And explicitly in the ordinance, it says to support arts programming in Burbank schools. It wasn't until 2013 that the ordinance didn't change, but the MOU changed, that said that it had to be durable, public. So that was my question, like, why?
So the question for a home is, I'm sorry.
I was just restating, so what?
So what? So for the audience at home, there's a question that developers can, they get charged arts and public places fee, and it's separate than it being a tax. And the question came up, one of the options of, can you give it to the Burbank, it can go to the Burbank Arts for All Foundation. And when it first rolled out, it was broader to support arts education. And then there's clarification through an MOU several years ago about it has to be arts education that results in a durable thing, like a mural or a structure or something our kids can work on. And we've asked the question, and I think it's important, that's why I wanted to, we have to have the right people in the room to have the conversation, because I've asked the question, I know the Burbank Arts for All, Trina's asked it, the board's asked it, City Council has looked into this, the city manager has. I think maybe it might be if we have a joint meeting, Vice Mayor Springer, that we can just talk through it so that the community understands what are the restrictions, why are the restrictions? Because there was a legal opinion that said if you take that fee and make it broader, it turns into a tax, which is illegal.
Yes.
Now, I think we should have a broader conversation of our goal. I think everyone's goal is, how do you sustain arts? Like, why not support education so that you have more artists in the future that do these structures? So there might be a way to open that up, but the answer we've had, I've asked twice since I've been here in the 4 years, and both times is like, we can't, it's illegal. But if it's something we're open to having a conversation in a joint meeting with everybody in the room, maybe we can find a creative solution. I don't know.
Yeah, it just kind of goes to the opposite of why it was established.
Yeah, understand. Any other questions? Yes, Jamie.
Can you talk, or actually our state representatives, can you talk about charter schools and how they affect public funding in education and what's being done for oversight for charter schools in the state? I know it's maybe not a specific issue for Burbank, but it is an issue in the state, so.
Question was, how do charter school funding affect public schools in the state of California? Anyone want to take that?
I'll just give Burbank, and if you want to give state level. So in Burbank, we used to have one charter school, and we are responsible as a school district for oversight of that charter school. When we did their 5-year review when I was here, it was not meeting the standards of governance, academic performance, or financial viability. So we closed it. And so we no longer have a charter school in Burbank. And then the broader question, just on funding, the public dollars follows the child, so the dollars will go to a student. If they're in public schools and they go to charter schools, those dollars are gonna go with them. So you will see in some school districts, urban school districts, that you don't have a class of 24 kids that go to that charter school. You have them coming from all over the school district, and so the expenses don't drop proportionally to that. So that's putting a big public pressure on that school district, or financial pressure on that school district. But they're both public entities. California does not have for-profit charter schools. And then the oversight, which is, I can go on, I used to oversee charter schools in LA Unified. I'll go back to the state, but the oversight, there is a challenge, there's concern, because school districts have the first authority, but then you can appeal to the county and appeal to the state, and so then you lose local control. So I know that a lot of advocates are saying that doesn't make sense. It should be a check and balance at the county to make sure the district does it, but not an overrule function.
Yeah, from like what I understand, like the charter school that we closed down because they weren't meeting standards could go to one of those other governing bodies or one of, and get reapproved to continue.
Right, so that's an example where we did all the work and said this school should not operate in Burbank. It does not serve kids well in Burbank. They could have went to the counter or the county with the same application and then came back and still would have operated in Burbank schools, and we'd have no oversight. And if the county said no, they could have gone to the state and come back. we spent extra hours making sure that that document was so ironclad that both those organizations would agree with us. So that is a concern you have about, you don't want districts to not allow innovative schools to happen in their backyard, but you also don't want people to go running around local control. That's just my personal opinion, not the superintendent's opinion.
Wait, come back up.
But did you want, I didn't know if the state representatives wanted to weigh in.
You summed it up beautifully. I don't have anything to add.
There are a few.
Arda, you need to be on camera, sorry.
The superintendent summed it up, but there are a few pieces of legislation that are going through the legislative process that address charter schools.
To have more oversight and that.
There are a number of them. I don't have the bill numbers at the top of my head, but that is something that the legislature is, looking at right now in terms of the bills that are going through the process.
So Dr. Hill, can you just tell everybody if they want more information or if they want to get involved in anything coming up?
Yes.
How they could contact you
So the question is like, how do you contact me? One, you should have gotten a yellow flyer with my email address on if you live in Burbank. If you didn't, it blew away. I apologize. But you can always email me at matthill@burbankusd.org.
One T, right?
It's actually PEGGY. Now, all of us at the school district, we do have an expectation of ourselves to respond to emails that we receive and phone calls. We welcome that. If you have specific things around the arts, definitely you can contact Peggy, you can contact Sharon Caseo. Our information's on the website. But also follow us on Facebook. You can get a lot of information through the district Facebook, even though I personally don't have an account anymore. I get the screenshots from our board members. And then you can, I would say, follow the advocacy organizations that you've heard from today. PTA has amazing information. Burbank Arts for All Foundation, Burbank Educational Foundation. I follow on Twitter, that's the social media I stay on. Just follow organizations to see what's going on and keep up. And then attend our meetings. A reminder again, if you can attend or you want to watch it later, at 7 o'clock at the district office tonight, we will be talking about the district's vision, our goals, the path we want to choose to greater student success versus scaling back, and what does that look like, and aligning that to the resources we get.
It's incredibly important that the parent community of Burbank Unified be involved in the LCAP process. Even though it's been a couple of years, it's not too late to get involved. The district actually needs parent feedback, and so it's important, if you're not attending live, to follow live stream. You can even sign up and let them know, because they have to be accountable to the county to ensure that the parents are involved in their process. So it's incredibly important for everyone to get involved. Alexandra.
I was going to ask, while Arda was in the hot spot there, we're very fortunate, I was going to ask this to Arda, but also to all of the other representatives of our local representative offices. We are so incredibly fortunate to have local representatives that support education and support arts education specifically. You guys are providing leadership in the state for how representatives can support their local districts. How can we also advocate in other areas to help support this legislature statewide? We know that you guys are the choir. Is there any advocacy effort that our community can make to influence other legislators in other parts of the state that maybe haven't joined the choir yet?
So the question is, our local representatives of the legislature in the state of California are doing a fantastic job being available to Burbank Unified and to be supporting education funding in the state, at the state level. Is there something that we can do as a community to talk to other areas, other representatives, or is there something that we can do to support education funding for the state of California and other areas?
If there are ever any bills that you are supportive of, for example, if you're supportive of any of the bills that I went over today that the senator is authoring, what you could always do is There's a website, it's leginfo.legislature, I wanna say, .gov, but there is a link to it off of the Senate website, which is senate.ca.gov. You can track legislation that way, and you can check to see what committee it's in. So for example, if the bill is going to be heard in an education committee, or, you know, let's say, it's about to be heard on the assembly floor, you can check to see who sits on those different committees, and you can call all of their offices, and you can advocate that way by just voicing your support for the bill, and that's a way to reach other legislators statewide.
Perfect. Great. Sarojini?
I have very little to add to that because that's perfect. But I would also just reiterate my previous point about aggregating your voices and not being shy about putting your voices together, either through already established, sort of bricks and mortar nonprofits, or parent booster groups or PTA, or, I understand you have a long process for taking positions on things, but whatever those groups are, feel free to speak in a collective voice, and then also organized amongst yourselves. Maybe contact the parents in your own class, your own child's class, come together, sign a letter, send a copy of that letter, building on what Arda said, to every member of the committee that's considering a certain bill, if you're tracking legislation, and even look for connections if you have parent groups that are connected with other parent groups in other parts of the state, and that's in an area of the state where a legislator sits on a committee, get a little strategic about it. Look and see where these people are from if they sit on that committee. What are the districts that they represent? See who has relationships in those areas. Connect with those parent groups. Send them a letter, send them an email, connect with them on Facebook and say, hey, we're advocating on this. We know that your legislator could potentially be making a decision on this. Let's organize. So get your chickens organized. That's what I would say.
Fantastic.
Yeah, please. So we're finding out tomorrow how effective we've been so far with our lobbying. So we will find out, is the governor gonna continue to buy down the retirement pension? Is cost of living? So the federal limit, or the floor for cost of living adjustments, lower than January. So the governor has an opportunity to do what's called a super COLA and bring it back up to January. We will find out tomorrow what success we have had. From tomorrow until June 15th is when we need to be very loud and united to keep the things that we see in the budget that we like and advocate for the things that are not there yet, and the power is yet. May 22nd is a big day in California. It's the first time that I'm aware of that the California Teacher Association and the California School Board Association is gonna have a joint rally in Sacramento. It's called Wear Red for Ed Day. There are gonna be local events out front of schools. I encourage you to join our teachers out front of our schools. We have school board members, Steve Frittner, myself, the president of BTA, going to Sacramento. If anybody wants to join us and meet us up there, you're on your own. Hey, we have no funding, but if you're able to get to Sacramento, and join us.
What date?
It's May 22nd. It's a Wednesday. It's promotion day for our elementary schools. I'm flying up in the morning. I'm coming back that night for the adult school graduation because it's that important. But others are going up. There's also a bus that's leaving from the Los Angeles area. LA Unified's organizing that. That's a longer day, but you can take a bus out of that. May 22nd, though, we can do hashtags, Wear Red for Ed. It is powerful to see parents, teachers, superintendents, board members all together instead of fighting. You remember when I started 4 years ago, it was different. We now are on the same page with everybody because it's right for kids.
The district Facebook page, could you maybe tomorrow summarize what you learned from the governor?
That
so
affects
we can get some
Burbank
feedback on that,
specifically. And what we need to take a stand for, what we
Yeah.
need to be
Yeah.
writing these letters about.
Good question, and I should talk about that sequence too. When we get the high level of the May revise that first day, it takes a week or two to get the details. So just so I set expectation, it's gonna be very broad, like these things are trending in the right direction. There's a lot of trailer bills and technical things that usually get pulled out from us. Now this governor's different. He was a straight shooter last time in January, and it's pretty much held true. But years past, we've said things, and it gets changed by the time we get the details. So I'll give you a high level as soon as we can. We usually wait for California schools.
Or even if you've got to wait 10 days or 2 weeks.
Yeah, whenever we have information we can share.
Is that a place where we can go? Where can we go? Do we go to your Facebook page, or do we go to the district website and the superintendent's message? Where can we go to get that kind of information?
I think it's important enough, I'll put it on my website, my message. I think that'll be the next message. That's a really great suggestion.
So, under the subheading of, joining voices and being sort of one with the messaging, I know a few months back, Joan McCarthy from Disney had mentioned that she was thinking about pitching to her ledge staff over there about starting a coalition of businesses and people in the community to lobby Sacramento. I don't know if anything's come of that, or if you've heard anything, but I was wondering if we could get like Warner Brothers and Disney to rally around this.
That's a good point. So the question was, there's been some talks about the business community coming together to advocate for state level funding for education. I'll be happy to, I haven't received an update where they are with that, and he just stepped out, but I'll follow up with the Chamber of Commerce and see where they are. What's that?
Maybe they can have a bus.
Last question.
Well, when you said you'll put it on your website, what does that mean? WSD?
Oh, good question. So Burbank Unified, busd.org. We will put it on the homepage of the school district website. I don't have.
BurbankUSD.org.
Oh, yeah.
We're here for you.
Thank you.
All right, you guys, thank you so much for everyone who came, everyone who shared their voice. The conversation continues. As Matt said, it's between now and June 15th. So now is the time to get involved. There's a town hall tonight. We appreciate everyone's energy and us coming together as a Burbank community. Thank you.
Yeah. And if you didn't sign in, if you didn't sign in before you got here, please sign in before you leave. We'll be sending out the resources from this morning to everybody. So if you didn't grab the paper copies or lose it, we'll have it digitally. And thank you so much for being here.